Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a chance to have some refreshments and to see some of the exhibitors outside. Just a reminder about the feedback form. If you've not done that already, please do that. You can do it old school, or you can use the QR code. And we do have a couple of polls running at the moment, so please don't forget those as well. Right, so our next session, we're going to focus in on operational and technological developments, covering a range of areas, including pressure management and the Paradigm Club project. But first up, we're going to talk about the Spring Accelerator. So we're going to focus on leakage and bursts. So I'd like to welcome Natalie Lamb, who is going to introduce the latest developments on the Spring Accelerator. Natalie is the Innovation Delivery Manager at Spring.
Thanks very much for that. So yes, hi, my name is Natalie Lamb. That's lamb like the sheep or the shank or the chop, so you can remember my name. And I'm here today to talk to you all about this super exciting piece of work called the Spring Accelerator. We've got a stand. We've not got any cool freebies though, so if you're looking for a freebie, avoid the stand. If you want to hear more about the Spring Accelerator, come to the stand. So I'm really excited to be here with you today for numerous reasons. I've never actually been to this conference before. It's really, really exciting to see so many subject matter experts, SMEs, in this room, and you know each other so well. I'm assuming you went drinking last night as well. It's just so nice to see a group that's so tight-knit. Secondly, I'm also kind of excited to be here because I want to go to the Birmingham Christmas market and get a Baileys and hot chocolate after the conference. Not going to lie. So thank you very much for the invite for the conference today to facilitate my hot chocolate needs. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is Spring, what is this Spring Accelerator process, and I've given you a sneaky look at what the actual problem statement for this global call for innovation is going to be, because otherwise you're going to be just waiting for the end of my talk to let me tell you the challenge statement, so I'd rather just tell it you now and then you can just leave if you want to. And then I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be wanting some interaction from you. So yes, you've got work to do at the end of this presentation. Apologies in advance. So make sure you've grabbed a coffee so that you've got enough energy to answer those questions. I won't be picking on people in the room though, don't worry. It is just virtual, so don't worry about that. So to start off with Spring. Now, if you want a really good definition of Spring and the services that we provide, you don't want to be speaking to me. You want to be speaking to those first 5 people to the left of my face. I'm here to give you Natalie's version of what we do as an organisation. They use a lot of really great words. They're really good at describing what we do. I'm not so great at that. I'm more about the nitty-gritty behind some of the work that we're doing. So this is Natalie's version of what we do as Spring. So in 2020, I do believe it was, a whole bunch, all of the water companies in the UK and Ireland came together to produce the Water Innovation Strategy, which is a summary of all the innovation needs of the water sector across the UK and Ireland. This is an open access and free document, so anyone can look it up. One thing that they really found when doing this review was that one thing that was really missing, one piece of innovation that really needed to happen, was there was a missing piece there in terms of the communication and the collaboration. Obviously, all of you today have Judith and the team working on the annual Leakage conference, making it such a success, inviting you all to share all your knowledge. Not all of the subject matter expertise, not all of the knowledge that we have has such a great collaboration, such a great network as yourselves. They really found that they were struggling with this collaboration piece. So a bunch of the water companies came together and they applied for the Offshore Innovation Fund to create a third-party organisation, which is the not-for-profit organisation known as Spring. Sometimes people think that I am a whole team of people. I am not. Within our organisation, we have 10 people in total. So sometimes if I take a little while to get back to you, it's because I am just one person and we're just 10 people in the whole organisation. So I just wanted to tell you that up front. So what are some of the things that we do to help enable that collaboration and that knowledge sharing? We do things like we have case studies on our website of different trials and projects that have happened in the past. This isn't just on leakage, this was on all of the water sector from source to source. We run what we call showcases, which are essentially webinars which can be water company-led, so water companies wanting to share the work that they've done, or supplier-led, which is suppliers wanting to communicate some of the research or work or projects or trials that they've done in the UK and Ireland. We're also venturing into a different space, which is all about suppliers. Jamie, could you stand up actually and give a little wave? I've got Jamie, who's my colleague here today from Spring. He is the expert for what I'm about to talk about. So again, if you want to hear more about this, speak to that guy. He is the expert on this. In my interpretation, in my words of what Jamie does, is he's trying to build like a Google of suppliers and like a Google of trials that have happened in the water sector. So that's kind of what he's doing. In my interpretation, my vision of what this could look like in future is almost like a ChatGPT, where you can go on this website, a water company can maybe search, I have a cast iron mains that's this deep in the ground and this long and it's leaking, what shall I do? And up comes a whole list of historic projects that have happened, as well as a whole bunch of suppliers currently working on this. That is my interpretation of the work that Jamie is eventually trying to build, but this is kind of a new area for us. But if you're a supplier, get in contact with Jamie because he's building this like Google list of suppliers currently. Apologies if I've just completely misled what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis. Now, what is it that I do? So I run the collaboration in terms of the Spring Accelerator program. So this is a global call for innovation. And I'm going to be speaking to you about our most recent one in a little bit, which is more applicable to you all here in the room today. But these are the different accelerators that we've run previously. So we're on our 5th one now. These are different, on the bottom are the different problem statements that we've investigated so far. It's a bit of a change for me. My background is I've spent a little bit of time in a water company, Anglian Water. I spent a little bit of time in the supply chain. I spent a little bit of time in academia. And it's really hard for me to go from being an expert in a field, I came from an area of microbiology, to this generalist, because as you can see, these topics can really vary. So it can be really difficult to try and find the right subject matter experts to speak to make sure you've got the right problem statement in this area, and to make sure you've got the right suppliers applying for the call for innovation. So this is the one that we're talking about today. The problem statement is, how can we effectively repair leaks in drinking water pipes while minimizing excavation? So this Spring Accelerator. One thing I want to talk to you before I get into this is what is a successful outcome of this call for innovation? So we have this ambition surgery, which is basically a webinar where we have all sorts of experts come and speak about what the rough challenge area is going to be. I'm going to cover that in a little bit in a while. Then we have a whole bunch of people in the supply chain who apply for this call for innovation. You can have a technology readiness level of really low, sort of like a concept, or you can have a fully developed innovation that's on the shelf and ready to be installed. The suppliers who are applying, they generally think of a successful outcome of this piece of work to be implementation or a trial in a water company. Actually, success looks like a whole range of different things. So for some suppliers, particularly if they have a lower technology readiness level, success could look like one-to-one mentoring with a water company for them. It could look like a workshop. So there's lots of different definitions of what success is. It's not necessarily always just a trial, but I quite often use trial, so apologies for that. I am meaning a whole wide range of successful outcomes. So this is what our challenge statement is. I've included a QR code, which is also on our stand, that you can click the link to and find out a little bit more information on what the challenge statement is and about how to apply for it when it comes to being open on the 17th of December. So how has this challenge been selected? So all the water companies in the UK and Ireland submitted their business plans, their innovation priorities. We went through all of these, we collated them, we assessed them to see what the top innovation priorities were. Water companies then voted. This is a lot of things. We did a lot of things. But I want to particularly thank Jez, who did a lot of hard work in this space. He engaged with the Leakage manager group to be able to narrow down some of those different challenge areas, find what their problems were. With this then short list of problems, we would then much more easily be able to go to the water companies and say, which of these do you think is the greatest challenge? Because sometimes when we start off this challenge process, just going to a water company and saying, what are your issues? It is quite a difficult thing for both us to ask and them to answer. So we took all of those key challenges together, and through that we discussed it in length at the Spring Accelerator 5 Ambition Surgery, which is again that free open access webinar. I can see some people in the room who were, thank you very much for you presented at that webinar as well. The purpose of the webinar was to understand the context behind the topic area of leakage and burst, to outline the playing field and to learn from the past. I purposely included this slide so you can see that we spoke to people who are knowledgeable, that I can see Joe Parker, that you are knowledgeable people of the room. So I know that you're a really close-knit community, and there's so much more value given when you know that the people who've worked on something know what they're talking about. So these are the people who are involved in that ambition surgery. They know what they're talking about. Everyone who attended this free and open access webinar had the opportunity to participate in an audience participation survey that was going on throughout the project. What they were able to do is they were able to suggest their own thoughts, their comments. They were able to input into what they think that the challenge statement should be. I realise some of you in the room might not have heard of the Spring Accelerator before, this call for innovation. So that's why I've also given you opportunity today to also contribute to this call for innovation. So we've taken this feedback. People really liked the idea of taking the leakage and burst challenge down the low and no dig route. So that is the route that we've gone down for our question. We've produced a draft call for innovation, which is currently under subject matter expert review at the moment. But you yourselves, everyone in this room, can contribute to this also still. I've got some questions for you now. This is the bit that you've got to wake up, I'm afraid. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you, we're quite crowded in here today. Normally I get people to like stand up and wave around and stuff. I'm not going to force you to do that today. I've got 5 questions for you. First question, please scan the QR code, or in Slido, it is number 1792611. Very important question. That is Spring Innovation asking the hard-hitting questions that the water sector needs answering. Jamie, how are the responses looking?
Okay. It's updating in real time. Scone rhyming with gone.
So scone rhyming with gone.
Yeah. 54%. Yeah.
So there's never a correct answer at Spring. I personally think the correct answer is scone. This is what I call this. I think this is a scone. More controversial questions to follow. But first, low and no dig. Why is this the Spring Accelerator 5 challenge area? So I've put here some bullet points on what I think the context behind this is, and I'd like you to scan this QR code, and again, it's a different Slido number top right, and let me know if you think this is an accurate reflection of the context behind this challenge area. You don't have to answer all of these questions if you don't want to. I'm noticing that a lot more people were keen to answer the scone debate than they were to answer this question, though. I've shared with Judith the slides, so afterwards, if you've not got time at the moment, then you can also fill this out after the event today. Jamie, are we having many people complete it? What about sort of numbers?
They're typing now. Okay. There's a lot of anonymous in the room, and a lot of them are saying yeah. So yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I'm surprised at you all. Where's the complaint? I thought you'd be moaning at us. No, this isn't right. You're forgetting about this. You're forgetting about that. I'm very surprised. But maybe it's because you need a little bit more time to be completing that. And I'm aware that we have 5 questions, and this is the first of the 5. I'm going to carry on pausing on this because I see a few people still on their phones. It is a question of, are they just on Instagram or are they answering the poll? I should have had some elevator music, maybe. Okay, I'm assuming Instagram, and we'll move on. Proper question number 2. So for this one, we tried to look at what some common barriers are to innovation within this particular area. So as Jess was saying before, water companies are increasingly interested in innovative solutions that can help them make repairs happen quicker with less disruption and reduced costs. But we have some specific challenges within this working environment. The ground can be wet because there are leaks. It's things like, but the call for innovation is for people not just in the water sector itself, but they can be for people from outside of the sector. For our last challenge, we had applications from the space sector, we had applications from the marine space. So we really have to let people know exactly what the challenges are within this area. Do feel free to scan the QR code and let us know if you actually think there's more issues within this space than what we've captured during this presentation. I'm trying to give you all enough time to answer. We've got a little bit of extra time, so what I might do is I might actually throw it out to the room. Apologies for making you have to do more mic work, but I was wondering if our roaming mic people are around anywhere, and we could maybe take some answers from the room on people's opinions. Suddenly people are suddenly very interested in their phones now I've mentioned that we're going to be doing in-room participation. Does anyone have an opinion to answer this question? Hands up, please. If not, I'm just going to pick on you. Can I start off with Jez, please?
So it's interesting looking at the low dig stuff, and we were literally having a discussion here about it in terms of one of the things about this is we go, yeah, there are technologies out there already. And in fact, if you look at gas guys, the gas guys are using kind of low dig stuff already. The problem that we've had is we actually did an UPQueer report a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, looking at how we can bring those technologies over. And it's not easy. Part of that is because their driving need in the gas side is they can justify everything on safety. Yeah, they've got to get down. They can spend a lot more money on that because a gas leak intrinsically is a lot more dangerous than a water leak. So therefore, their solutions can look an order of magnitude more expensive and still be viable. So we've got to take those solutions and scale those down into something that's viable for us as well. Yeah, that works for what we're doing. And I think, you know, we were looking, how do we dovetail this in with the other work that we've been looking at? And obviously we've got UPQueer, we've got the Off-Water Innovation Funded project there as well. This is far more generalised. That's far more of a specific product. This is far more generalised of going, how can we just speed up these repairs? And as I've talked this morning, one of the areas we know is the relationship with councils and things like that. So that's where this low dig keyhole surgery idea comes from, of can we make a far smaller excavation where it's not a man entry size and work from the surface in order to be able to do that. But there are a number of complications with doing that, and not the least of which is that top one there, accurate location to within centimetres in order to be able to do that. Now, if we can solve that, that would help us on other ones elsewhere as well. It would help with our other excavations, which are man entry size, hopefully decrease the number of dry holes we get. So actually, some of the technologies that we would have to develop here would help us in other areas as well. The one I've talked about, visibility. So I've been actually looking at sonar cameras because you'll be working in an environment that's filled with water. It's going to be really hard to see what's down there, unlike the gas guys. Yeah, they can see what's down the bottom of the pit. We won't. So how do you do that? Sonar cameras. Again, if we get those kind of technologies developed, we can use there when you get a large burst main, you could literally drop a sonar camera in and get an understanding of what's down in the hole already. So some of these technologies won't just be used on here, they also have other uses within our industry as well. There we go, I'll stop speaking now for a change.
Thanks, Jez. I do agree with that out of sector piece into the water sector. I think high cost is something that's been quoted a lot by some of the water companies that I've been working on how to facilitate some of that movement across from out of sector. I saw that you took the microphone.
excluding that top one, all of those have been solved in Germany and in the US with like sort of excavations. Exova did a project as part of their pipeline team, probably about, it must have been 10 years ago because I worked at Affinity at the time. So there are solutions for this, and the reason that they've not been bought in is probably because of that top one. But at the same time, it's also they were trialled multiple times, and I think that's the barrier to innovation, is that every single water company has to trial it, and so no one wants to sort of stump up for the constant sort of number of trials that they need to do to be able to satisfy everyone's. And again, don't get me wrong, wholesome water is the most important thing that we need to do. However, everybody trialling it on to the nth degree just means that's the biggest barrier to innovation in the UK water industry by a country mile.
Thank you very much for that. So I think there's 2 points that I'd like to add to that. So the first one is part of the Spring Accelerator process is that we're involving all of the water companies in the UK and Ireland. So that sharing knowledge piece is sort of integrated into part of this process. So as opposed to trials that are standalone trials, all of the water companies are talking to each other about what trials they're anticipating, what they're hoping to do. And sometimes we have water companies come together as part of this process who maybe they've got facilities for a trial to happen, but they've not got the financial resource, so they've not got the staffing. So the water companies work together to have collaborative trials. And that's part of the benefit of working through the Spring Accelerator process. We don't actually offer finances as part of our application, but the water companies provide that finance together, working together. I think the second part of that is it's really interesting to hear that there's a lot of solutions out there in this space in the US, and hopefully this call for innovation will attract those US suppliers to give this a little bit of a go. I previously worked with a supplier who was based in the US, and the US market is very, very different from the UK market. I mean, I wouldn't have had a job in that role if it wasn't. So my role was all about helping to facilitate that movement from the US to the UK, because it is difficult and it's really, really different. So thank you very much for your comments. I'm now going to move on to the next question. Again, a very controversial one. What is the proper way to make a cup of tea? Is it A1? Is it B2? I mean, if you're saying D4, I'm judging you. I'm not going to lie. Like, that's not okay. That is not okay at all. I think for me, I'm going with a solid... Is there much of a difference between B3 and C2? I can't really tell the difference between them, but somewhere around there, I think. Although I do leave the tea bag in way too long, so probably a B2, A2, if I'm being honest. What are the thoughts from the room, Jamie?
I think B3, I think.
B3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, hang on. D2?
D2. Do we have any jokers in the room who are going with that questionable number 4 row? A1.
And A4.
A1 people, you're just too healthy. Like, that's not... An A4...
Oh, someone's also said about having a hot chocolate and stuff.
Oh, hot chocolate, yeah, that's it. Bailey's hot chocolate, people, that's where it's at. Again, there's no right answer, obviously, apart from, you know, not D4, just to wake you up a little bit. So what solutions are we not looking for Spring Accelerator number 5? We're not looking for solutions that have been tried again and again and again, have not worked previously. We're not looking for that sort of thing. We're not looking for innovations that have not learned from past lessons in the leakage and burst space. We're really trying, Spring as an organisation, we try and reduce duplication of projects, duplication of work. That's not to say that there are less trials happening, but trials that are complementary to each other. So for instance, in a different field, it could be an innovation on one site which is groundwater fed and an innovation on another site which is surface water fed, as an example. So the 2 trials are still happening, but they've got slightly tweaked problem statements to give slightly tweaked different answers. Solutions that are not going to be helping water companies. Our stakeholders, in a way, are the water companies. The reason why we've put so much work in, that massive mound of bullet points about all the work that we've put in, is also make sure that the problem statement is correct, the call for innovation is correct to help water companies the most. We want innovations that are going to help water companies solve their challenges. And we don't want solutions that are not going to work, obviously, or that are inaccurate. So we want solutions that are going to help and take a step forwards to answering this challenge statement. What solutions are we looking for? We've kind of already covered a little bit, so I'm going to move on to the next slide. We've got here 2 QR codes. The first one, and again, I put the slide numbers top right, and again, you will be receiving this afterwards, so you can still contribute to the call for innovation and input your thoughts and ideas into this afterwards, so don't worry if you've not got enough time to write out all the opinions that you've got at the moment. But the question number 3, and this is out of 5 questions, remember, is what solutions such as these have value to the water sector? And question number 4 is what solutions have already been tried in this space? So again, I'm not looking for duplicate projects here, and that second question in particular can be really, really difficult to answer. That tool that Jamie's trying to build at the moment is it's just so difficult to work out what has been done in this space, what is currently being done, and what will be done in the future, just in one water company alone, let alone communicating all of those strands of data between the water companies. So what solutions have already been tried in this space is a little bit of a difficult one. I'm not going to call out to the room for question number 4 because it is a never-ending list of things that have been tried in this space. But would solutions such as these have value to the water sector? That doesn't have to be a yes, no. There could be extra things that you want to add. I'm still seeing a few people taking pictures. So I won't move on just yet. They could just be taking pictures of me and my beautiful pink hair. Judging by the head shakes, that's not the case. There we go. I was just waiting for that one person taking that last picture there. So, last question, and then I will leave you alone and you can get on with your lives. So, how can we effectively repair leaks? Is this the right challenge statement? Just overall, is this the right question that we should be asking? If it's not, why is it not? Feel free to take a photo of the QR code and let us know if it's not the right question. I know a lot of people in the room will have very different opinions from each other, and depending on your background or what area of this space that you're working in, but I want to know if you think this is the right question that we should be asking. Hopefully, we're going to get a lot of yeses. But if not, I would like to know how we can improve that if possible. I'm not going to go to Jamie and ask the results because people were so excited by the scones, according to the room, and tea questions. So in comparison, the spring questions are, I assume, are quite low on numbers. Do we have any yeses? It's the right challenge statement, Jamie?
Yes.
Yes, we have some yeses.
Yes.
Okay, well, at least one yes. That's good. We've got one supporter in the room. I'm going to go on to next steps while you are filling that out. So I want to talk a little bit more about the program now. Don't worry, this is my last slide. So we're having the launch of this call for innovation on the 17th of December. We have an online platform. The full call for innovation, which is like a 3-page document, is attached to that. There's also a PowerPoint presentation in PDF format, which is an innovator guidelines document, including all about terms and conditions and things like that. We have a submission window of the 17th of December to the 31st of January, just making sure that we are not making you do work over Christmas time, because that kind of sucks. Then applications are going to be closing on the 31st of January. What happens then? So we have an internal spring review. I'm mostly assessing applications to make sure that they are relevant to the problem statement, to make sure they're valid companies, and to make sure that they exist in this space or have a good plan to exist in this space in future. After my review, we then get all of the subject matter experts around the UK and Ireland, one from each water company who have opted into this challenge, to then assess all of the applications. The questions that they're going to be assessing against are all in the Innovation Guidelines pack, so I won't bore you with them at the moment. We then have a final number, let's say 5 innovators who are going around to the next stage of the process, which is the innovation exchange. Before then, we have, Jez actually termed this, on Britain's Got Talent, there's a big red buzzer, and you press the buzzer and golden confetti falls from the sky, and that contestant goes through to the next round. We've got that as part of this process as well. So each water company has access to 1 golden buzzer. So if there's one innovator that they really want to see, even if they've not scored so highly, they really want to see them there in that innovation exchange day, they can press their golden buzzer and they can go through to the next stage of the process automatically. The reason why we include this is we have a whole range of different water companies in the UK and Ireland with a whole range of different and specific niche interests and things they want to research, so we want to make sure that they're not excluded. So we have the golden buzzer as part of that. Innovators then have time to prepare their presentations and things to go forwards to the innovation exchange. The innovation exchange is either going to be an online event or a hybrid event, and the innovators are going to come along. It's a bit like the pitch section of Dragon's Den, so all of the dragons are the water companies. There'll be invites to subject matter experts, innovation managers, and SMEs for the different water companies, and maybe key decision makers as well. They're all sat in a room, and they have pitch after pitch after pitch. A pitcher comes in, they give their pitch, Q&A, and then they leave. That's the plan for that. And then afterwards, we have virtual deep dives, which is like the negotiation part of Dragon's Den. So that's where we have virtual meetings. The innovators come, the key decision makers, and someone from the water companies come, and they discuss, they negotiate who's going to be taking part in what project, what have they got to commit in terms of financial resources, in terms of staffing, and so on. That's when the actual meat of the discussions happen. And then either trials happen, that's that mobilization phase, trials happen, or maybe we've got workshops that are ran, or one-to-one mentoring, relationships that are established. And that is the end-to-end Spring Accelerator process, and that is the challenge area that I look after within the business. So that is the process, and this has been me describing this process a little bit. Maybe I can come back next year if I've not annoyed Judith and the team so much. I can have another Bailey's hot chocolate, and I can maybe tell you the results from some of these innovators and some of the work that we've been doing after the call for innovation. So thanks so much for listening. Feel free to come up to our stand and talk to us about this work.
Thanks, that's a yes from me. So, yeah. Thanks very much, Natalie and Jamie as well. Brilliant. Right, we're going to move on now to talk about pressure management and building knowledge and networks. So we've got 3 speakers for this. We've got Andrew Chatterley, who is Business Development Manager at Technolog, Ronnie Mills, Business Implementation Manager for Smart Assets and Pressure Management at Yorkshire Water, and Luke Thornton, Director at Technolog. So over to you guys.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Are we afternoon yet? Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Just need to move this on. There we go. Building knowledge and networks. Yeah, good afternoon. Hope you're all well. Enjoying the Silver Jubilee Leakage Conference. I don't think anyone's mentioned it's 25 years so far, have they? So, thanks for the introductions, Jeff. Thanks, Judith, and the team for asking us to present today. And David Jacobs, wherever he is, thank you for initially putting us forward. Don't know whether I actually mean that or not, to be very honest. Public speaking, as I said, it's never really something you want to do, is it? Unless you, yes. or Natalie, to be fair, Natalie presented very, very well then. So what are we going to do today? So the plan for our presentation today is to give an overview of the Pressure Management and Control Forum, which is in its 15th year, or its crystal anniversary, as it's also known. We've actually facilitated, I'm going to come on to what it actually is in a second, but we've facilitated 55 forums to date. We're actually having the 56th forum next week, which will be hosted by Wessex Water at their head office in Bath, Claverton Down. And as you can see, we're going to get a triple-headed presentation today, and there is good reason for the 3 of us being up here today. So I'm going to give an initial overview and explain a little bit about the Pressure Management and Control Forum, when it started and why, who attended back in 2009, who's attending now, along with a few slides which will highlight the locations where the forum has taken place over the years, along with a list of all of the non-water company presenters that have been involved. Before I pass across to Andrew, who will give a summary of why he was keen to get involved at the forum when I first spoke to him back in 2008, and when he was Wessex. No, it was 2008. We started in 2009. 15 years. He hosted the first event in February 2009, and hence it's appropriate for Andrew to be here today and give us his views. And then we'll move a bit more up to date with Ronnie Mills from Yorkshire Water, whose first forum was the 44th event in December 2021, which was actually the first event we could have after COVID. Plus, he and Yorkshire Water hosted the event in March of this year, which was the 15th anniversary of the forum. So obviously also very apt that Ronnie's here. Ronnie's also going to provide some great insight into where Yorkshire Water have got to in a very short period of time in terms of pressure management and advanced pressure control, along with the benefits realised as a consequence. And then Ronnie will also wrap up with the key takeaways that the group have fed back as being imperative for a successful pressure management and control strategy. So to begin, so what is the Pressure Management and Control Forum? A lot of you here today will be familiar with the event, but for those of you who don't, the concept, which was requested back then by numerous water companies at the time, was to arrange and facilitate an open and honest forum for the water industry on a quarterly basis, which would be hosted by the water companies themselves at their own offices or depots. And the focus of the forum obviously was going to be centred around pressure management and the benefits of this approach on the water network. The event was all about, and by the way, we're talking about 2009 here when we started, the event was all about introducing and reintroducing pressure management to the industry. And due to the relaxed nature of the event, which it always has been and will remain so, it's always been about making sure that delegates were not afraid to ask their fellow counterparts that stupid question, because the stupid question invariably isn't the stupid question. And as well as the pressure, and as well as pressure management, the other general discussion topics at the forum are all related around calm networks, minor and major servicing regimes, the importance of planned maintenance, reduction in burst and leakage, new products, the benefits of new equipment, ease of installation, so on and so forth. And it was surprising at the time, back in, I'd say, 2008-9, the number of water companies that were just tinkering with pressure management. In fact, some companies really consider this a black art, whereas others were actually heavily invested and benefited from having a strategy in place, and which for some companies probably hasn't changed that much, still isn't dissimilar today for some. So who attended the forum in 2009? So there's some, I'm sure you recognise some of the characters who are listed on this inaugural forum. So we only actually had 8 people on the first one from just five water companies, and those guys there, Andrew being one of them, they were the Premier League leakage managers of the time, so I'm sure you're all very familiar. And thankfully, all those people are still with us anyway. And then moving up to this year, so the most recent forum took place in September, was attended by 35 delegates from 16 water companies, and next week, in fact, next week's forum, we've actually got 32 delegates already confirmed from 12 water companies. So it's been going for many years, 15 years on, 50 forums later, and the event's still going very, very strong. The next couple of slides are the companies that have hosted the forum over the years, the number of times, and then the sort of map will show the different locations that the forum's taken place over the years. So you can see we move the forum around on a quarterly basis, so you can see the list of all the companies that have hosted over the years. Oh, there should be another slide there. Right, okay, never mind. We've visited many of these places on numerous... In fact, there should have been another slide. Never mind. I'll move swiftly along there, Judith. And as well as the host company, so the host company, I say we move from water company to water company, and this movement from location to location keeps the forum fresh and allows the host company to showcase their company and their region. And as well as the host company who deliver a presentation to the group on the day, giving an overview of their company and the plan for the AMP, along with project successes. We also have 1 or 2 other independent non-water company presentations related to the industry that take place on the day. So over the years, we've had all of these various companies attend, and this always helps drive the debate and the discussion. I say lots of familiar companies there who've attended and presented over the years, and a few a few on there who we don't see or hear from anymore, but really broad related group from the industry. I facilitate and chair the forum and produce an agenda, which for those of you who have attended, know that we very rarely stick to the agenda, and it goes without saying I leave the technical stuff to the experts. And I'd like to think that the forum has brought like-minded individuals from the industry together since 2009. The event began in AMP4. Forum soon be heading into its fifth AMP8. And in actual fact, to reiterate the title of the session, the forum has really assisted in building knowledge for all of the participants and creating a fantastic network of contacts for everyone. I'm really pleased to say that the forum has openly promoted collaboration and relationships between the water companies way before collaboration was a thing. So hopefully that's provided a bit of insight in the purpose of the forum. And I say, which I've already mentioned, it's all about maintaining regular focus on pressure management and the importance of having the dedicated maintenance of critical assets. And then I'll pass over to Andrew. There you go, Andrew. I'll move you on. Thanks, mate. No problem.
Hello. I need to thank David Jacobs for dobbing me in on this. Not something I really want to do in Leak. So, 2007, I become head of leakage at Wessex Water by default, and that probably sums up where we were. A new pressure control manager, a small team, Pandora's box, because every time you opened some covers, you didn't know what was in there. There was an in-house modulation device which had kind of died. Various two-stage controllers, the batteries had run out sometime previously. And it was difficult. We didn't have any data. We didn't have a strategy. But what we did have was enthusiasm and some fairly keen yet inexperienced people. So when Luke got in touch with me, I think I met Luke in 2008, 7, you remind me, and we got on very well, and he suggested a pressure control forum with like-minded people. And for me, that was just what I needed, because of all those reasons there, really. I needed people to bounce ideas off. I needed people to tell me what direction. And as you saw with that first list of delegates, I think the one who helped me the most back at the time was Gordon Hall, a man who came to see me, a man who answered my stupidest questions, whether on the phone or incessant emails. So that's 2008, and it looks pretty tricky with leakage not in a great place and no real pressure control strategy. So what the forum gave me over the next 3 to 4 years were an opportunity on a quarterly basis to meet these guys, Gordon, Willie, whose surname I cannot pronounce still to this day, Abadab, and various other people who came in. And I think, it's where did we end up after that journey? What did it give me? Well, we had data, we brought reporting in, and the team skills and knowledge came in. We put people through modelling courses, and within 18 months, we were designing our own PMAs. Leakage was being driven down. And where we didn't have the skills gap, I think the big thing for me was to bring people in from, people in this room who can come in, your own team learns from that, don't they? And, help us make better and more informed choices, really. We trialled new products. We built a sound strategy for the next AMP, to see that AMP through and for the next one. We safeguarded a fragile network. And that's really that is my journey with the Pressure Control Forum. I'm pleased to still be part of it today, although now as working for Technolog. And my attention span's about 3 minutes, so I think we're nearly there. And I think it's time for Ronnie.
So afternoon, everyone. A little bit like Andrew, my journey with the Pressure Management Forum started with a new role at Yorkshire Water. The new role was part of a new team at the beginning of AMP7, first 2 years, and it was a result of our successful appeal to the Competition Markets Authority because we felt that the money we were given for AMP7 to hit our leakage targets wasn't enough to successfully deliver. So, new team with a 15% reduction in leakage as a target, and we wanted to do something different, not just the normal active leakage control and doing more of that. We wanted to do something a bit more transformational and something that used a lot of the smart technology that's available in the industry at the minute. So the Smart, Calm, Resilient Networks program was born. There's 3 main streams to this program. So the first stream was smart platform analytics. The second stream was focusing on smart metering, which I'm sure a lot of people in the room are very aware of. And the third bit, which was my new role, so it's me over to the right, not the caricature, and it was around smart assets, looking at the upstream network and trying to increase the visibility on the upstream network and focusing on a large-scale rollout of pressure management. It's something that we've done in Yorkshire Water about 10, 12 years previously, but wanted to reinvigorate it and basically do more of it, get some more PRVs out on the network and reduce the pressure down. And at the same time, increase the smart network maturity. So let's get some controllers on the network, some loggers, and start to control that network a lot better, which will reduce the AZNP, the average zonal nightly pressure, and also maintain a calm network. So flatten out that diurnal profile that we see across, fluctuating across the system between day and night. But to do this, we need to recruit a new team and also work closely with Utilitech, because they had the framework for the PRV maintenance in Yorkshire, and they've done it for quite a few years. So if there was anybody that knew about opportunities on the network, Utilitech would probably want to speak to first. So onto the Pressure Management and Control Forum. So this is where, from speaking to Utilitech and speaking to Vernon, he encouraged me to attend the Pressure Management and Control Forum. So the first one I went to, like Luke said, was about 3 years ago to the day. I think it was the 9th of December, actually, down in Matlock. And Utilitech were hosting because it was just post-COVID. I think a lot of water companies were wary about meeting up and spreading the virus as it was. So Utilitech decided to host the day. So I went along, not really knowing what to expect. Probably the first forum that I'd ever been to, especially professionally anyway. And got to the hotel meeting room, and there was a large boardroom style table, and there must have been about 30 people packed in there, all the way around the perimeter of the table, which I thought was a good idea because it invites a bit of conversation rather than just everybody staring at a big screen at one end of the room. So we got into the afternoon, and there was a lot of presentations on transients and all things pressure management, which were really good, really interactive. But the main bit for me was probably the second half of the afternoon, where it got into a roundtable discussion on all things pressure management. So knowing the task that I had ahead, I thought this is fantastic. I need to make some notes here and listen to the people in the room. So what came out that afternoon was a lot around people, process, policies and communications, which me coming from an engineering background, I probably not considered that much. In my mind, I'd been at Yorkshire Water 17 years at this point. I knew pressure management worked, and I assumed everybody else did, but not taking into account the average Joe sort of customer that probably doesn't understand that pressure management will reduce the amount of leakage on the network, doesn't understand that it'll reduce the amount of bursts that you have on the network. And the only time that they'll realise that their pressure's been reduced is when that power shower that they had is no longer a power shower, or that hose pipe suddenly doesn't reach the end of the garden from wherever they stood. So they're going to inevitably complain about their low pressure, and then that's then going to impact the customer-facing people at Yorkshire Water, the people that answer the phones, the people that go out and visit, the customers who are suddenly angry because the pressure's lower. So there was a lot for me to take in and understand and think, for the successful delivery of this programme of work, there's a lot more that needs to be done than just the engineering side of finding a potential area for pressure management, delivering the construction phase and commissioning it. So there was a lot that I needed to do in the background, as well as creating that team. And that was the 4 key takeaways from that afternoon for me. So as I said, I needed to create a dedicated pressure management team. And I also needed to create a strategy. So one strategy that we're going to deliver everywhere we could in Yorkshire to reduce pressure down to a certain level, to help reduce leakage. And then I need to make sure that the senior leaders at Yorkshire Water were all signed up to it. Because when the field technicians started complaining because of the increased customer appointments and the angry customers on the network, or the CMEX targets started to increase, and we're seeing the impact on the customer side of the business, that the CEO downwards was signed up to deliver the pressure management strategy because we knew it was an effective tool for leakage. And then the last bit on there is just a comms plan. So that's for an internal comms plan. That's so that the field technicians and the people that we're speaking to the customers actually understood what pressure management was and how it actually made an impact in reducing the amount of leakage on the network and reducing mains burst. So 3 years later, we've achieved a lot of milestones in Yorkshire Water. Got some of them on the screen there. But I suppose over this last 3 years is where that forum has really kicked in and benefited me through the delivery, because it created that network of people that I could get support from, that I could rely on to help me out with things, that I could learn from, but I could also pass on that knowledge as well. And it helps me benchmark Yorkshire Water against other companies, especially when you're going for money and cash, to deliver new things that are a little bit different. Your directors and your senior leaders want to know that somebody else has done it, and it de-risks that investment a little bit. So what have we done? We've put in over 100 new PRVs, so new physical assets out on the network, which has given us some good returns. And then we've gone smart, quite big, to be honest with you. Got about 1,200 controllers, advanced pressure controllers, out there on the network, which is around 70% of our total pressure management valves on the network. And we're actively increasing that over the next AMP period. And this bit in particular was one where I relied on that support of the network. I think Hannah's in the room, she was working at UU at the time. And we'd put 200 controllers in at Yorkshire. We'd got a decent benefit from that leakage reduction. But to scale up to 1,200, the senior leaders at Yorkshire Water needed a bit of assurance to say it is actually scalable. So I was aware that United Utilities had done something in a previous AMP. So I reached out to Hannah, and the benefits seemed scalable. So I fed that back through the business case to the senior leaders, and we got the green light to carry on. So that's another plus that's managed to, speed up that delivery over the last 3 years. Then on to our AZMP. So we were at about 52 at the beginning of the AMP, and we've managed to reduce that down to 42. And that's from a combination of pressure reduction and increased visibility on the network. And we've also reduced that pressure delta, so that difference in nighttime and daytime pressure. I'm sure there's a lot of leakage growers in the room that know that that'll probably increase the hour-to-day factor a little bit, which can negatively impact your leakage calculation. But what we've seen from taking a balanced approach and trying to maintain a flat line is the reduction in minimum night flow actually outweighs any small increase in that leakage calculation as a result. And the last bit on there, so this is probably the bit that I'm most proud of. So this is where we've utilised all that real-time data that we've suddenly got coming into Yorkshire Water and into that platforms to inform our maintenance plan in the future. So it's looking at real asset health of our valves and of the network. We're using that data from those 1,200 controllers to create a just-in-time predictive maintenance of our PRVs. This is just an example of that. So the orange graph that you can see there, that shows the controller working harder to maintain the downstream pressure on the PRV, which is the red line below it. And what we actually see at this point is the bottom graph is the critical point in that DMA. And you're not really seeing much change at all, even though that controller is working a lot harder just to maintain the operation of that PRV. And what we've actually done here is you can see where the drop off on the orange line is. We've gone out and maintained that valve before failure. And I think what we probably would have experienced had been a total failure of that valve, because we're not seeing such an impact at the CP. This is just to understand the scale of that. So that 1,200 controllers, we've got 72,000 acres across Yorkshire. And we normally target previously proactive maintenance of around 800 valves a year. And that's a mix of minor and major. And coming up to November, December, we've actually predictively done about 240, 238 valves. And that's just from performing maintenance when it's actually needed rather than just doing it proactively for the sake of it. And that's over a 50% reduction in maintenance activities, and that brings with it its own savings. So lastly, just to wrap up, key themes for the pressure management and control strategy that I managed to implement and a lot of other people have that attend the forum. So a dedicated team is a must. You need to have those people that are constantly reviewing pressure management we've put in place, liaising with people across Yorkshire Water and customers, and also identifying new opportunities for pressure management. You need to put a strategy in place and get the senior leaders to buy into that idea, and we are going to reduce pressure. It will have an impact to customers and people within the business, but it's the right thing to do because it's the most effective tool we've got, probably the most efficient tool for leakage reduction. And last bit on there is, smarter networks are essential. I think nowadays there's a lot of controllers out there, there's a lot of new technology, but being able to use that to inform us to look after our assets better and maintain them, in a more timely manner, I think is just so important for us. And that's it. That's everything.
Thanks so much. Right, I'll take a couple of quick questions, if that's all right, and then we're going to move on. So, Ronnie, I think they're mainly going to fall to you, actually. So we've got two. The first is around the average zonal pressure loggers that you put in. It'd just be good to hear a little bit more about that, and I suppose maybe for the others, do you think they should be adopted more widely across the industry? A lot of companies don't necessarily go for those. And then from your experience, fewer bursts with calmer networks?
Yes, we're seeing a lot fewer bursts. I mean, obviously, the time period to look at the reduction in bursts is a period, 3, 4, 5 years. That's when you really start to understand it. We've seen a real drop-off, especially for the new pressure management as soon as it's installed. But, time will tell, but we're already seeing a reduction.
Yeah, brilliant. And Luke?
Just basically agreeing with Ronnie there. I mean, in terms of, we do a lot of work in Scottish Water. When we first began working in Scotland back in 2007, 8, we did a lot of work in Edinburgh. Again, putting controllers in, doing a lot of work on minor, major servicing, that kind of thing. We saw, you don't see it instantly, but obviously it takes a bit of time. But sort of 12 months down the line, we probably saw about a 50% reduction in leakage and bursts as a consequence of not doing pressure management to then doing pressure management.
Brilliant. Good. Right, well, in the interest of time, we're going to stop there when we get to lunch. But thank you very much again for all of that. Right, so for our final talk from the morning, we're going to be joined by Courtney Connor, who's the Leakage Technical Manager at United Utilities, and Stuart Mordaunt, Managing Director of SME Water. And they're going to provide us with an update on the Paradigm Club project and how it is helping to develop a new approach to innovation through collaboration. So over to you.
Right. Okay, wait a minute, do something funky. You go first.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the Paradigm Club project. So the Paradigm Club project's been running for the past 2 years, and the idea behind this is how can we challenge the way that we're targeting DMAs? How can we look at how we use the data that we get from DMAs? So I'm going to just do a quick introduction. Then I'm going to talk about why PCC operability doesn't work when we're looking at targeting. So why we should be doing something different. So what's the reason why we need to change? And then Courtney's going to come in and talk about how United Utilities are using Paradigm to shape what they're doing and doing things in a different way. As a disclaimer, me and Courtney are both a little bit too OCD about our PowerPoint slides. So if there is anything a little bit squiffy in the PowerPoint slides, that's a reflection of how much you had to drink last night, not on our PowerPoint skills.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, we started the project in October 2022. We had 4 companies that joined in on that. So United Utilities, South Staff, Severn Trent and Anglian. And then in the past year, we've had Yorkshire Water, Thames and South West have joined. So we now have an analysis set that covers 70% of properties within England, all feeding into that model. So what are we doing? We're looking at DMAs, and we're trying to say, how can we analyze this DMA, not using minimum night flow and total daily flow, but using all the data that's available. So the full suite of 96 time steps in there. So we build up an expected profile of what's happening in the DMA. We do start with background leakage. I can see Stuart Trow squirming in his seat a bit already. Maybe that's something we need to update. We then look at expected behavior. So what types of properties have we got in that DMA? What households have we got in there? And you see on the right-hand side, we've got a breakdown of the properties in there and the non-households that are in there. So we're building up an overall model profile of what should be happening in that DMA. What we then do is we compare the net flow. So we can see in this case, the net flow doesn't match. And actually, when we went out to investigate that, we found there was a problem with the logger that had been set up on the inlet to that DMA, and actually there was a scaling factor, so we can adjust it. Why that's particularly relevant for my presentation, makes a good example, is because actually, both before and after we found that problem, that was an operable DMA. So before it had a per house, a PCC of 245, which is legitimate. It's operable for most water companies. And afterwards, it's around 146. So it highlights that whilst as an industry for reporting purposes, we're driven to focus on making sure operability is up at 90–95%, but actually that doesn't tell us that the DMAs are reliable and trustworthy, and we can send people in with confidence. So, in Paradigm, we have 5 different categories that we use to categorize. Maintain, leakage, integrity, and demand. And these DMAs are typically operable in the top 4 of these categories. And when we look at the bottom section, in the data category, that's where we tend to see that the non-operable DMAs fit into that area. We're just going to run through and look at these different categories. So first of all is our maintain. So that's where in Paradigm we say we've got a really good fit in terms of what's happening there. So we see I've got a blue net flow profile and it matches what's happening in the DMA. That's where we've got confidence in what's happening. So that gets a good tick. We'd be normally doing leakage in there using operability anyway, so we're doing the right thing. Moving through, we use our leakage category to identify where we think there's a leakage problem. So there we can see in that area there's a significant and consistent offset that tells us the leakage in that area. So nice and easy for an analyst to look at and go, yeah, there's leakage. We need to do something. We can also look at the unaccounted for water shape. So you can see there, whilst there's a bit of noise on that profile, that unaccounted for shape, which represents the difference between the actual net flow and the model profile, gives us that full confidence that there's a good chunk of continuous usage in that area. Again, doing the right thing in those areas. Moving down, we then put things into integrity categories where we think there's a problem with either demand in the DMA, where it doesn't match our expectations, or maybe a problem with the integrity of the boundary, so something to do with the meter, or somebody's left a boundary valve open. Again, we can see a high proportion of operable DMAs in those categories. So what do they look like? So looking at the demand area first, we can see we've got a level of discrepancy there between what's happening in the area and what the model's saying. And that falls into the down. And when we look at that as an unaccounted for water profile, we can see we have a low discrepancy at night, which is good because it means that there isn't leakage being reported and calculated in there, because that's when we calculate our leakage. But actually, we've got a volume of water in there, which is being missed. So we're thinking that that DMA is performing well because it's got low leakage and it's operable, but actually there's something not right with that DMA and what it's doing. So that's questionable. We're not doing leakage work in there incorrectly, but at the same time, we're missing customer demand in there. And actually, when we come to do our reconciliation top-down, bottom-up later on, we've missed an opportunity to understand that area better. Moving on, we then look at where we think there's a physical problem with the integrity of the DMA, a valve open or something wrong with the meter. So that might look like this. So the opposite of what we just looked at. So we've got a shape that fits well in the day, but it doesn't fit so well at night. The problem with this is that it sits in our nighttime, so actually that's then treated as leakage. So from our reported calculation, we're then saying that's leakage. Now, when we do our reporting, we do have differences in night use and variations, and they tend to average across the company. So not a major problem for reporting, maybe. But from a targeting perspective, we've got 40 meters cubed per day of unaccounted for water in there, but we'd be saying to our targeting teams, there's 80 metres cubed per day of leakage in there because we're so fixated on just that nighttime period to do our calculation. So not a good area, because we're sending leakage teams in to do work when actually there probably isn't a leakage problem in there, or even if there is, it's masked by something else that's stopping us from doing what we need to do. In the data category, we're saying we've got little resemblance between the net flow and what's happening on the model profile. So it might be that the areas are really complicated, so that's not necessarily a wrong area. We've just got different flows, we might have storage in there, we've got a lot going on in terms of what's happening. So they can be quite complicated, hard to analyse. It might also be that the data is quite erratic, so it's doing generally the right thing, we've almost got a diurnal profile in there, but it just doesn't quite make sense, and very lightly at the bottom you can see the model profile, which shows how much water that area should be using. So it's using a lot more water than it should be doing overall, but really we can't draw any conclusions as to what the cause might be. So that's not good, because we're sending targeting teams in there to do work, but actually we haven't got any level of confidence in how those DMAs are performing and what they should be doing. Final bit on the right is where we've got non-operable DMAs, where we're saying there's a problem. So they might look like this. That's not the normal behavior for that DMA. We've got a meter that's causing us a problem and giving us a net flow profile that looks a bit chaotic. Or we might just have a flat line in an area, so we just haven't got data at all. So in those cases, we're doing the right thing. We're not sending teams in at the moment. So this leads us into why PCC operability for leakage targeting doesn't work. We end up with this big chunk of areas where we're doing the right thing, and a big chunk of areas where we're doing the wrong thing. And when we look at that as a percentage of our operable DMAs, we can see that only 55% of our DMAs sit in that category where actually we can target them with confidence. We can send leakage teams in there and say, we're absolutely sure that that DMA is doing what it should be doing. 40% of DMAs, we can't target with confidence. We're not actually that 100% sure that the area is tight, that the meters are working, that the customer demand's right, that actually all the data is doing what it says it should be doing. The key takeaway from this is that data leakage, so that problem that we get, that emerging data problems that we should be challenging and looking at on our network, completely blurs this picture and often results in us sending people into the wrong areas. I'm going to hand over to Courtney to talk about your strategy.
Okay, so first of all, I have to do a little disclaimer. If you've seen me present before, I always have to say this. I do sometimes make a high-pitched squealing noise. It is a hiccup. I might just get one, but if I don't say it, it'll happen and you'll think what's going on. And now I've said it, they're probably not going to happen, even though I've been stood there trying to hold them in while Stuart was talking. Also, Stuart is the more serious one, although he's smiling at this. I'm the more fun one. So if you could all stand up, please. Like actual stand up. It's no technology interaction here, it's just... Everyone's like, oh God, she's making me stand up. Okay. This is really purely for my amusement. Is everyone up? Okay, good. Right, sit down. Oh no, hang on, let's do it the other way around. Stay stood up if whenever you hear the word collaboration, in your head you go, stop, collaborate and listen. Well, you all do that. You're all the same as me. Oh my God, no one sat down, or you didn't understand the instructions and you all say, okay, great. That was just totally unplanned. Yeah, see, look, there are other people like me. I bet Jez, oh yeah, Jez is totally stood up, right. Every time someone says it, and we've heard it loads through the course of the presentations, it goes, and I just wanted to know. You can now sit down. Thank you. That was also partly because everyone looked like they were waning a little bit, and we're very conscious that we are standing between you and lunch. So, sorry for hijacking that. Sorry, Stuart, I didn't tell you that, because I just came up with it whilst I sat down. He's going to tell me off later. He's now thinking, Jesus, she needs to speed up and get through the slides. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about strategy and how Paradigm is helping to shape our strategy. So we're now actually going to look at numbers of DMAs and what the insights that we are getting from Paradigm are helping us with, what they're telling us, and how that links into where we're going with our strategy. So as a quick reminder, Paradigm looks at unaccounted for water over the course of a day. So it focuses on day, night, and also intraday analysis. And we tend to talk about meters cubed per day. But we, probably like a lot of water companies, are used to talking about leakage using a fixed minimum night flow window. We're 3 till 4. Don't know what you guys are, but each to your own, in meters cubed per hour. So, Stuart's already touched upon this idea of confidence, and I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more. So, confidence is a really important thing, and what Paradigm's giving us is more confidence, but it's allowing us to ask some very specific questions. So, first of all, do our DMAs make sense? I think maybe we've assumed for a long time that most of them do, as we looked at in the numbers before. If they're operable, yeah, they're fair game. We target them. We've got a calculated leakage figure. But do they really make sense? Do we have the correct leakage target? When you've got a lot of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, you need to prioritize where you're sending your resource. And let's say we've got enough resource to be in maybe 5 to 6% of our DMAs at any one time, and I don't know, 2,600 odd pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. Have we got the right targets? So can we prioritize those DMAs and get the most from the resource? Can we trust the calculated leakage figure? Ian, please don't have a heart attack that I put that up there. But that's a really good question. And I think sometimes we can fall foul of, well, it's come out of the system. Yep, it says that much. Please go in and look for that much. But maybe you're looking for a little bit more. Maybe you're looking for a little bit less. And what impact does that have on many things, including engagement and morale? And then can we take the right action, or the right action and have confidence in the action that we're taking? So some really, really important questions that we all need to ask ourselves. And we've started to do this through the help of Paradigm. Okay, so this idea of confidence. So as Stuart said, in our top 2 work streams, maintain and leakage, we have a high confidence that we understand that the problem is leakage. In our next category, we have high confidence, but actually we have high confidence that the issue is not one of leakage, it's one of demand. Then moving down to integrity of the physical variety, we have lower confidence in the level of calculated leakage, or the values of the calculated leakage. And then down at the bottom, in our data, and as Stuart said, that's where the majority of our non-operable DMAs sit, we have very little to no confidence in those calculated leakage figures. So, as you can see, we have around 60% of our calculated leakage and our unaccounted for water sit in that high confidence leakage pot, which is great, good correlation. But when we break that down, we actually see a shift. So, for anyone who wasn't quick enough with my slides, that 63% split out between maintain and leakage, we see a shift in where that leakage is. So 2/3 actually sits in our unaccounted for water leakage category, and 20% you can see sat in that maintain. Probably thinking, why is this important? We'll come on to it. So 43%, 2/3 of our leakage that we understand, that we can act with confidence, sits in that leakage pot. So we can have confidence that we need to go in there and we need to find it. So more accurate demand analysis gives us a better understanding of where leakage is. It improves our DMA prioritization. As I said, 2,600 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. We constantly need to prioritize those to make the best decisions. And it's going to, so we're not quite there yet, but we're working on it, me and Sean and John, lead to a more flexible regional approach to how we allocate resource. So we actually have a 5-county business model at United Utilities, which has many, many benefits, but there is one leakage target. So we need to get 5 counties to all pull together and work towards that top target, and we need to be flexible with that resource. Okay, so that's improved targeting, which is a great insight for us. Okay, but what about the other third that we said, that 20% that's highlighted in blue for you? Well, actually, only 4% of that is targetable. The other 16% is background leakage. We've obviously already heard about that in previous presentations, and that is a challenge for the industry as a whole. United Utilities are not at the point yet where we are trying to eat into our background leakage. We've got plenty of the regular stuff to get sorted first. So background leakage is a challenge. Probably not a revelation, but it is one that we need to tackle. Okay, moving back to that 43%, I like this, whopping. I didn't put that word in. I think Stuart does have a little bit of fun in him. He chose whopping. 37% of that 43, can't read my own slides, is targetable, and only 6% of that is background leakage. So brilliant. We are sending people where we think the leakage is, and we think it's leakage that they actually can find and we can do something about. It's the real stuff, not the data stuff we talked about earlier. Okay, moving to the bottom part where we've got that less confident kind of banding. 40% of unaccountable water and calculated leakage sits in that lower confidence kind of areas. So we're going to have a look at that in a little bit more detail. So let's talk about integrity issues. So in some areas, Paradigm tells us that we are missing customer demand. I'm pleased to say it's only 6%, but hey, I'll take 6%. It's something to go at. We now at least understand that that is an issue for us, whereas in the past we wouldn't have had that understanding. So we've incorrectly been targeting those DMAs looking for leakage, when actually that wasn't the right decision and wasn't the best use of our resource. So we actually need to do something different with those, and we need to deploy demand analysis and investigations instead of our leakage teams. Okay, so find and fix the missing demand. Ooh, another bit of the strategy that we need to do. Okay, in other areas, we're still in the integrity physical variety. We have metering and valve integrity issues. We might have configuration issues, all at play. So now we're aware of those, because lots of these are in our operable DMAs, which in the past were fair game to go target, we can now do something about them. We need to recognise that we need to do more and to improve those DMAs and to maintain them. And there's a really big engagement piece to do that. This idea of collective responsibility, and I'm going to come back to this a couple of times. We're a very big organisation, but I think this applies to all organisations regardless of your size. There are many people who play a part in looking after DMAs, maintaining them, keeping them operable, and quite often you need that collective response and responsibility, but it's also quite hard when it doesn't sit with just one person, because you're so reliant on people working together and collaborating to get a result. See, I love that word. Okay, moving on to the bottom category, we're going to talk about data. This falls into two kind of things. We've got short-term equipment failure. Okay, make sure we resolve the equipment failures quickly and effectively. That's pretty straightforward. We're pretty good at that. Maybe we get a bit better, but we're pretty good at that. We also need to ensure that the wider business understands the impacts that they have and make funding available. So actually, to keep this understanding of our leakage position and to drive it to a place where we're pushing even more up into our maintain and leakage work streams, improving our confidence, there is a real case for continuing to fund when maybe in the past there wasn't an obvious problem that needed funding. Okay, so resolve equipment issues faster, not a revelation, but it's an insight. And again, this idea of collective responsibility. Lots of different hands touch that problem, and not any single one is responsible for resolving it. Okay, and then finally we have our complex and difficult to understand DMAs. So then when you start on these DMAs to start thinking, can we configure these areas to make them more simpler, that's maybe not good English, let's just go with simpler. And can we improve the data availability to actually make them analysable? Again, I'm not sure if that's English, but please don't hold that against me. We've probably not spent a lot of time looking at that, but now we know it's an issue for us. Actually, we need to dedicate some resource to it. Okay, so simplify. So I've talked about lots of stuff there. Probably none of it rocket science, and you're thinking, yeah, we're doing quite a lot of this. Just want to kind of summarise how this all pulls into a strategy. So the first part for us is about trying to prove our DMAs against Paradigm. We're aiming for a fleet of 5-star DMAs that we understand, we have confidence in, because then when they deviate, we can manage them with confidence. In our maintained DMAs, what we want to do, something different to maybe what we've done in the past, is just respond to breakout. See a change, we respond to it. In our leakage DMAs, we need to actively target those for detection. We need to push this regional approach to prioritisation and maximise the return we get from their existing resource levels. And then obviously still continue to focus on prevent activities to reduce leakage overall. In our demand integrity part, we need to respond to breakout still, because that's legitimate, but we need to focus analytical effort on demand investigations, and also heighten our focus on data management and quality assurance, because now we know these problems are there, we need to fix them, but we need to make sure they don't creep back in over time. In our physical integrity, we need to still respond to breakout, consistent theme here, but we need to galvanise operational support to resolve physical integrity issues. In the past, we're used to, it's non-op, therefore I need to do something. We now need to get to the mindset of, it's operable, but I can't trust it, we need to do something. So there's a lot of work to do there to galvanise support. And in our data, we obviously still need to respond to breakout if we have the data and it's possible to do so. And we're now trying to galvanise support from a wider kind of cohort of people, the wider business. So we need to invest in the equipment, and we need to simplify DMAs, which again, unfortunately, is going to require money. Then we can calculate make DMAs calculation and detection friendly. So, in summary, operability is important for reporting, but isn't suitable for validating DMAs for leakage targeting. We saw earlier that Stuart showed how we went from 92% operable DMAs, would have all been fair game in the past, actually down to focusing on 55% of our DMAs. Targeting DMAs with high confidence allows our leakage teams to be more efficient and effective. It also helps with, they get results, they're more engaged, morale, lots of other benefits, but a big one is getting more from our existing resource levels. Promoting this idea of collective responsibility for DMAs and doing the right thing in the right place. And then applying PALM to data leakage. So, prevent the data issues occurring through good maintenance and hygiene processes. Awareness of when things do go wrong and reacting to quickly fix them. Locating the source of the issue and potentially the team. And then mending the data issue promptly and in a sustainable way. That's it from me. Key insights are on the screen and happy to take any questions.
Brilliant, thank you very much, very interesting. Right, so we've got a couple of questions online and then we'll see if we've got any in the room. So the first one was, has the flow data used for operable DMAs been physically validated in any way?
Yes. We're very good at fixing obvious problems. So yeah, our analysts would on a regular basis pick up very obvious problems. However, through this process, some less obvious problems have been highlighted. So we think we're validating, but are we validating to the level? Yeah,
interesting, thank you. And how does Paradigm take high users with abnormal profiles into account?
So where we've got logged users on the network, we use the actual data. Back in the summer, the team developed a suite of machine learning algorithms. So where we've got, and I think there's 4 different algorithms, Rashid's around here somewhere, will probably criticise me afterwards, but it's 4 different machine learning algorithms, and it looks at the whole historical behaviour to then start to pick up how those areas are behaving. And so if we've got missing data, we're then infilling with that. But I think the onus has to be on where we've got those customers, we need to be logging them and understanding what's happening so we can just account for them.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. Good. Right, any questions before we go for lunch, or are you smelling lunch? Right, one here actually. Yeah. Thanks. You could say your name.
Dylan, Crowder Consulting. Hi, Stuart. I'm going to get a bit technical, but I think you'll be able to answer it. You said you can't use the operability measure as a way to target areas. Is it not because there's a misunderstanding of how to use it? So companies are setting quite a wide banding in some instances. Surely if you... The purpose of that banding was that the components within the calculation have... It's an estimate, so it's not correct. So the PCC range acts as a buffer to capture those errors, as it were. But if you tighten those bands, it will start to throw out further areas that you should then investigate. And would it not throw up the same areas that you're flagging up now?
So in the example I showed at the beginning where we've got a PCC of 245, that's a perfectly acceptable PCC for different property types. So in that case, actually we had quite small properties in terms of what they're using. So I think unless you're going to go and create bands for each individual DMA, then I think you're going to struggle to get that level of kind of investigation, which effectively is what we've done. But the problem is then that you're not just interested in the volume of water that people are using. A lot of the insights that we're getting is comparing that shape to how is the demand varying through the day. And in the example of the demand stuff, the just doing a leakage and PCC calculation doesn't necessarily pick that up, because you're often looking for that stuff that's happening in the day rather than in the night time.
Good. All right, well, yeah, thank you both very much. Right, it's lunchtime, so yeah, we're going to go back out into the kind of main area. We're going to regroup at 2:10 sharp for our last session, when we're going to focus on upstream leakage. Please don't forget your evaluation forms, and yeah, go and talk to Natalie on the spring stand, and the PhD students maybe who were here yesterday as well, and we'll see you in just over an hour. Thank you very much.